Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast brought to you by Tacticam. Tacticam is by far the easiest way to begin filming your hunts. Whether it's the budget-friendly solo or the 4K 5.0, Tacticam has something for everyone. Check them out at tacticam.com. This year we're also working with Spartan Forge. You've heard us talk about them on the podcast. Spartan Forge is like the Farmer's Almanac on steroids of figuring out when you need to be in the woods. You can check them out at spartanforge.ai, and right now they have a 14-day free trial. So you go on there, sign up, and you can see what the deer movement historically looks like, the best days that you should be in the woods, peak rut, all of that information, predominant wind, spartanforge.ai. And once you decide that you like it enough that you're going to purchase the app, you can get 25% off by using code BOWHUNTER. You can check that out at spartanforge.ai. This week's episode, we talk with our good friend Greg Litzinger about what drives you after success. So Greg's killed a few good deer this year and is still grinding hard after it, trying to get what he calls one of these salt marsh unicorns. And we talk about tips for late season, tips for hunting the marshes, a little bit of ground hunting. Greg's always got great insight about hunting public land and pressure and dealing with, the ups and downs that come along with it. So you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. Real quick, just got to give a shout out to our Patreons. Patreon is a crowdfunding for podcasters. That money goes directly towards new equipment and all sorts of different stuff. I'm actually recording this on a new podcast recorder, so we're going to see how this works out. Makes it a lot easier for me producing the show, and we couldn't do that without guys like our Patrons. And you can check that out at patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles Podcast or bowhunterchroniclespodcast.com. But 99% of that money goes back into giveaways. So we do quarterly giveaways. This quarter we are giving away a Mystery Ranch Sawtooth with the lid. Same pack I used on my Colorado elk hunt. Really liked it. Wanted a little bit more space, so I did buy the lid for it. And I had polled everybody to see what things they wish they, if money was no object, what are they not spending money on. So like one of the things that came up was rain gear. Nobody wants to spend the money on expensive rain gear, but everybody needs it. So we're going to be giving away a set of the Badlands Bale rain gear as well. So we're giving away the pack, we're giving away the rain gear, and then we also are giving away a pro pack from Base Map. So right now, I don't know if it's still going on, Base Map had their Black Friday deal, Cyber Monday, was 30% off. So Base Map is $30 for the year. If you use code Chronicles when you sign up, you get 20% off. So it's $2 a month, $24 for the entire year. The layers are awesome, but we're giving away one of those pro memberships, and they send you a hat and a shirt and all the stuff that goes along with that as well. So if you're interested in that, you want to slide us $5 and have a chance to win, basically a $500 pack, $250 set of rain gear. You can check that out at bowhunterchronicles.com. Just click on the Patreon link or go to patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles Podcast. But if that's not something that you're into, just tell somebody about the podcast. Let them know, you like what we're doing. You got to check these guys out. They're just like us. They're worse than us, and they got a podcast. Either way, leave us a review. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're putting up a bunch more stuff on YouTube. And we've also got a new series coming up. So we're going to do some tips and tricks type things. That's going to be a weekly podcast coming up starting the first of the year. Going from, getting a new bow to kind of setting it up. We're going to have John kind of spearhead that, and you'll be able to find all that stuff on our YouTube page. So if you go there and subscribe, but either way, just tell somebody about the podcast, leave us a review, and enjoy the episode. Thank you for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Adam and John sitting here in the studio. It's been 3 to 4 inches of snow since daybreak, and starts to get a little down. I mean, I'm excited for the hunting portion of it, but the driving in the snow and the sleet is no fun. That chuckling that you're hearing in the background, that is our good friend Greg Litzinger. How you doing today, Greg?
What's happening?
You guys getting any of that snow yet?
Yes. No, it's 60 degrees here today.
Oh, man. Yeah, the salt trucks are already out on the road today, and it's like, son of a bitch, come on. It's going to rain tonight, so just let it melt on its own.
It was colder in October than it was this whole month of November.
It's been a screw year.
You know?
I was up in the UP like the week before our gun opener, and normally it's like last year where there was 10 inches of snow on the ground. Like I shot a doe on the way up to camp, and it was, literally 10 inches of snow. This year, it was 67 and 68 degrees in the evening when I got back to my truck, like at dark. It was still, almost 70 degrees, and that's in their upper peninsula.
The worst.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, especially that far north. You're like, it should never be 70 degrees. Right. Maybe in August, but not in November.
Right. We were up there in July, and it wasn't even that freaking warm, like son of a bitch.
So Greg is one of probably the hardest grinding guys. Humble, has a great, I think, attitude, good sense of humor. Very much like us. He kills a lot bigger deer than we do, but he has that same self-deprecating, understands that public land is going to be whatever it is. So you're going to get out there and you're going to have a dude cut a 4-wheeler trail right to your honey hole.
Yeah. That's always a pleasant time. It's like, hey, thanks. And the sad part about it, like those moments, and there was that one stand, it was like a 2-man ladder stand, like not far off. It's probably a guy and his son. And that's the shittiest part, because that kid's learning to cheat from Jump Street, and it's like, that's just awful for the future of hunting, because I think fathers, like because I got kids, and it's like, you don't want your kids to have to suffer like you did, so to speak, but at the same time, how my dad, like we grew up, like it sucked hunting. It was very little property and very little deer, and you worked for every deer you got, but I'm glad I went through that. Like, I look at my kids, it's like, I don't know if they get to the hunting age, they want to hunt, like, well, they're going to be hunting with me. I don't know if I could resort to stuff like that or try to make it easy for them. I don't think it's not going to build your character much, especially a teenager or like a new hunter. I don't think it's a very good idea, personally. Yeah, I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot, but.
I was listening to a podcast today with our buddies on the Chasing Tails podcast, Walt, and he was talking to Warren Womack, and he was talking about getting out there and seeing his first deer, and he was super excited about it. And Walt said he had kind of had like the same experience, and I've my dad, when he listens to the podcast, he's like, man, you give me so much crap. I'm just, such a bad role model or whatever. Yeah. And it's not the case at all. I was thinking about it when I came up hunting. From the first time that I hunted with a bow in my hand, like by myself, like I saw a deer. We had a bait pile, but there was deer directly underneath me, and there was deer on the bait pile at 15 yards, and I was like, it's too far. Like I literally shot like straight down and missed the first sit ever. And but I was just thinking about that. Like I saw a deer from the first time, and we also have property like up in the UP, which at the time, this wasn't in the UP, but that had the highest population of deer per square mile in Michigan. So like every time from go, I didn't ever have to we never pursued big bucks, because you just had to step into the woods and you'd see deer. So it was like, it's a lot easier to just shoot the deer that are in front of you than go out there and try and get one,
and learn how to.
Right. And so I completely get what you're saying. And that's what's fun about this for me, is that marrying into this family with John and his dad and Grizzly Adams and, my father-in-law, it's like freaking these guys, like his, Frank's living room is like literally the room of death. And it's like steelhead and brook trout and turkeys and deer. And, they might not be the biggest deer, but they're mutants. And it's just an interesting, that's an interesting take on it. Like, because John is the most excitable guy when he runs into other hunters or other sign or whatever when we go out hunting together. So it's nice to see your like very dry humor, like coldly portraying it as like there they are again.
Yeah.
I get like frustrated, obviously. I mean, and I have to say, it's public land, it's not my property, whatever. It's just that you start putting in time and then all of a sudden you find a good spot. And I've said this before in our podcast, like, I don't care where you go in these woods in Michigan. I mean, it happens every time. You're out and you're looking at a spot, like, oh man, this is good. And all of a sudden you look up and you see like a stand that's probably older than like a tree that had stuff nailed in it like 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a good spot then, and it's still a good spot. But there's not a place that you're going to go in these woods that someone hasn't hunted before. I mean, for the most part. And trying to get away from the people, and then you do get a good spot, you see some good sign, and then all of a sudden, like what happened to me right before the gun season opened, I'd seen a decent buck out in this marsh, and all of a sudden I get back from the UP and I look at it, and there's someone had put a tree stand up, or a big like ladder stand right in the middle of the bedding area in this marsh. And I was like,
Yep.
And it took more than one person to get this big ass homemade welded up steel stand out there and traipse around and cutting into the trees. I'm like, well, this spot's screwed for now. At least they probably won't kill that buck because he's, in the next county. But
yeah,
but so I just get excited sometimes.
Yeah, it's pretty common around here. Like our muzzleloader season starts, I think, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week. And it gets real difficult to pattern deer this time of year, especially the does, because so many people flood the woods because we got a short muzzleloader season, then there's like a week break, and then our 6-day firearm. Then we got a bunch of doe days of muzzleloaders. December's basically all gun, like 20-some days of gun hunting. So everybody's in the woods. All the people that don't bow hunt are putting out their bait pile. Like a majority put out bait piles. So you get does patterns in the middle of November. Oh, they're going to come through here. These bucks going to do this. And you sit a spot for 2 days. You're like, what's going on? And then you're walking out. There's fresh lanes cut, ladder stand, and a bait pile. Well, those does, they just bed off the bait pile 50, 60 yards.
Right.
So it changes. The patterns are constantly changing. Their bedding are constantly changing. I don't really like hunting in the middle of November around here because it's 10 times harder than it needs to be. And I don't necessarily want to cut somebody's bait pile off. I used to. I'm like, oh, screw you guys. I'm just cut you off. I'd rather not, And so it's very challenging for me. Like it's a good time to be in the woods. The camera intel's there, like deer moving, but man, those are just bedding, just in random spots. And it's just like, you got to get super lucky. It's difficult enough. You got to have a little bit of luck to begin with, but then you have so many new food sources in the woods in a short amount of time. These deer are just like, it's a smorgasbord. This guy does sweet potatoes. This guy does flavored corn. This person does apples. So the deer's like, oh, fuck it, I'll just eat all around, and it changes their whole pattern. And you're like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. Their scrapes will end up being somewhere else. It's a very challenging time to be in Jersey, in the heavily hunted areas. It's a good challenge, it makes you realize like I'm not that good or slick, at the same time it's frustrating.
So one of the things, Greg has been one of the frequent guests on the Vitals Live. So we've had a lot of different conversations and time to talk through some of this. And you're having what I would consider a great year. I don't know how it stacks up for you, but that's kind of what I wanted to get into was, like, what has been your best year ever? Like, can you take us through, like, the best year that you've ever had?
The best year I ever had was probably one year I killed 3 bucks. It was the first year I really killed a little bit larger deer than normal. It was a 2.5, but I killed 2.5, and then a big 1.5 all from the ground. I shot one at 40 yards, I shot one at 20, and then I shot one at 3 feet, all in a span from October 16th to like November 11th. It was super, that was, like I watched the hunting public and Zach and all these guys from the ground. Like I did that a lot, because you're hunting the reeds and marsh and stuff. You've got to I was working 7 to 3 at the time, so you got to, an hour before dark basically. So I wouldn't even go to tree stand. I just go sit next to a tree. And for that season, I had more deer in bow range. I became a better hunter, better bow hunter. And I said I killed 3 bucks, and I killed like 2 does on top of it. I think I killed 5 or 6 deer that year, all from the ground. And it was pretty cool. I got the 2 are mounted and the one's a Euro mount. So I do have them like on the wall. So it's pretty, I look at them and I remember like the 2 mornings I shot the one, and the night I shot the one at 3 feet, which is, insane. Thing was grunting after doe, and I was sitting on this big oak tree. I'm on one side, he comes in, and I can see nose and antlers, and I'm like, oh my, and I kind of like out of fear just leaned back and pulled my bow back. I basically probably could have poked him in the eye, and I'm shooting like right in his throat. I kind of like blew him out, and I was shooting really tiny broadheads at the time. So I just started shooting really distance, a little 1-inch 3-blade, and that thing burned right through him. And that deer, I mean, he ran like 300 yards, but blood was just everywhere. He was all rutted up. But that was probably my coolest bow hunting moment, as far as like shot wise, So I was like off the stool, like leaning back. I was gonna like fall off the stool. I'm like, this deer's gonna, because he's all rutted up. You hear the stories, they're gonna attack you. So I thought this deer's just gonna like maul me. That was, I mean, they weren't my biggest, but that was probably my best season as far as sits in the woods, kills, and like I said, I shot the one that was 40 yards, which was really far from me at the time. But I was practicing at like 50 yards, and I mean, I pinwheeled this deer at 40 yards, and he didn't go like 40 yards. It was great. I shot him at 40. He went about 40.
Well, that's really cool. Like to hear that, because I mean, you're saying that these aren't your biggest deer ever, and that's not what it's more of the story, right?
Yes, and the evolution as a hunter, like that was the first time where I was passing like the 1.5-year-old bucks. Again, I want something bigger, and I shot the one like a big wide 6, and then I shot the 8. I don't know, like a week later or whatever, I think. So it was like it just kept getting, and that was, I felt if the deer wasn't as big as that 8 that I killed, I wasn't going to shoot it. So it was like that step where I was like, all right, I'm stepping my game up. They weren't deer might only be 80 inches or so, 85 inches maybe. I never scored it, but it was like that 2.5, decent body. And I'm like, I killed him from the ground, and I had other deer. Like I had an opportunity on a monster the same morning I shot the 8, but that it didn't play out, to my favor. But it was like, I can do this. That burst of like, I got this, and I never shot anything under that ever again, really. So it's like that, like I said, that stepping stone where I want to kill bigger deer. I scouted, I shot my bow. Like I did all the due diligence, but I really like ramped it up in the off season, back when there was an off season for me. And I made it my mission just to shoot a better deer. And I think the following year I didn't shoot anything because I was looking for a certain caliber of deer, like 2.5-year-olds, and I went, not for lack of trying, I did pass up some good deer, but it was nice knowing I can, kill bigger deer that people go, wow, it's a big deer, because at the time, they're pretty good deer, for the area. It was right when we started implementing that, 3.1 sided antler restrictions. So, it was, I think, right at the beginning of that, or like a year into that, I shot these deer. So 2 years later, it's a lot more bigger deer around because, well, they were allowed to get older.
Yeah, one of the things, like I said, why I wanted to ask you that is because, like I said, you're having a banger year this year, not without its ups and downs. But
Yeah.
we talked a lot about like motivation. Like, so, to, like, for myself, like I said, I shot like that same caliber of 2-year-old buck. It's like almost 100 inches, and the motivation. So now I've got another tag. I've tagged out in Michigan one time in my whole life, so it's not like I've got this other tag like burning a hole in my pocket, because like there's years where I don't kill one deer, let alone two.
Wait.
Yeah.
I think I read something earlier today on the podcast, something about that, or on our Instagram, that you were going to get out the boomstick.
Well,
So that tells me that
a
tag's burning the hole in your pocket.
Well, so I do have a doe tag for Newaggo County, and I have this camera that's been soaking out there that's got a really nice buck on it. But this spot, I would imagine, like, if you, I don't know, you see like the Dan Infalt type stuff with the big like cattail marshes and stuff. This is like a gun hunter's dream. Like, it's this big oak ridge that overlooks this marsh bedding, but it's probably 100 yards across of like a grass field, or like some sort of weird, like on the aerials it looks, I thought it was like a marsh or like cattail marsh or something, but when I got out there, there's no water. I imagine if it was like a super wet year, it might be kind of mucky, but that it's not like that at all. Like, so when I got out there, boots on the ground, it wasn't at all like what I was looking for. And I've got like 3 trees set up where I could shoot, where I think I can shoot with a bow. Where I would bow hunt it. But
what about ground? We were just talking.
Well, that's the thing, is like, I'm so intrigued by, I've got this other spot where I had on that post that I put out there, I had like 6 or 7 does just come milling around like right in front of this camera, and all night. It's a cell camera, so it was like in real time. I'm like, holy shit, like it's like a parade of deer like just hanging out in front of my camera, and
there's no bait or anything.
No,
we cannot bait.
No.
So,
and there's no, and like all night long, I just moved the camera like literally 40 or 50 yards from where it was, where I was getting like 1 or 2 pictures, and then when I went in to move the camera, like to pull it, like 50 yards away, there's like this giant crossing and tons of fresh tracks. So I was like, well, maybe I'll drop it there. But that property is the one where I would like to kill one from the ground. Like, I'm going to go back in there on Thursday, Thanksgiving morning, and that's a bow only place. So I don't have to worry about being shot or shot at or anything like that, because it's still our gun season. So, and Thanksgiving is notoriously a deer drive type.
So yeah, but so if you're on the other property, you're going to be more protected if you have a gun with you instead of your bow. It's
gonna be muzzleloader season. So I'm assuming that there's going to be less guys. They're going to have already pulled their deer camps. It's way the frick back there.
Are you going
That's
out
why
there
I
with like a flintlock muzzleloader then too?
No, God, no.
A real
rifle. Yeah.
Oh, a rifle.
Well, this is where I took Uncle Frank last year, because I wanted to jump shoot some deer. Like, I tried to do my own little drive, and it almost worked. But he's just had such a shit season the last couple of years. Like, he hasn't killed a deer in 2 or 3 years, and it's just.
I thought he killed one first thing last year.
No, he missed one. He hit a branch, and then he missed a booner, and then he didn't see 2 deer in Missouri. He's missed 3 8-points this year and hit one that he didn't recover. Like, it's just been terrible. But anyways, what I was saying is that it's very unlikely for me at this stage of the game to say that I'm going to kill 2 bucks with my bow like I have every other year. So my motivation to get out there, I mean, I'm shitting in high cotton right now because I got a good buck, that I killed. Like, and I guess I don't feel like in any way, shape, or form, like you were saying, like I got this. And like we talked
Mhm.
about before, we haven't really gone into it on the podcast other than I screwed it up and we have to come back to it later, is that I got to full draw on a bigger buck than the one that I already killed this year. And I was kind of in the right spot. So in that sense, at that spot, I feel like if I'd have killed that deer, I'd have felt like maybe I've got this figured out or like I did learn something. But at this point, I feel like I just got lucky. And the odds of me getting lucky twice in 1 year are not there. So, I do not have that, like the confidence to be like, yeah, I'm freaking Billy Badass Hunter. But for like yourself, so you've been on good deer, you've killed 2 good deer, and I want to get into that, but I want to talk about the motivation to continue going out when, we're doing this podcast right now at 6 Eastern time because you have to be to work at 1:30 in the morning, and then to still
Yeah.
think about deer hunting on your days off and things like that when, 95% of the population is like, fuck this, I need to sleep.
Right.
So,
Yeah. The motivation, I guess, is like if you're passionate about something, you don't really necessarily need to be motivated. It's that's probably the best way I can put it. Like I'm always thinking about deer, even probably when I shouldn't be, like at work. I'll be like thinking about, or like now it's Onyx maps and base maps, all these things. It's like you have all this, and then the YouTube. There's so much information at your fingertips. Like it's hard not to be into deer. Because it's like, oh, look, sweet. It's like 20 years ago, you need a magazine, and you can't really like now. I got a phone. It's like like I'll put earbuds in at work, like I'm talking to somebody, and I'm really like reading an article or watching a video on YouTube or something. It's like, oh yeah. My boss sees it. I'm like, yeah, phone. I'm talking on my phone. It's like, oh yeah. But meanwhile, like I'm listening to a YouTube video or from somebody trying to learn something. Like it's so. But to stay motivated, like I said, I'm just passionate about it. Like hunting's a unique thing where you can always be better. Like there's not like a time limit. Like sports, there's a time limit. They'd be good at baseball, be good at football. There's a short window that you can be great or good at something. And then at times like, yeah, you're not fast enough, you're not strong enough. But like deer hunting and fishing, it's like sometimes you can always get better. There's always something to learn. And you don't need to be biggest, fastest, strongest, smartest. You just gotta just be determined, to want to take it to that next level. And I think that's where a lot of people fail is they're part-time. They don't, it's not full-time. I mean, now with social media, you can check somebody's feed. If they're not talking about deer, 365 days out of the year, then they're part-time. If you always see them in summertime, if all their posts is about fishing, they're part-time. They do it. They're a full-time outdoorsman, but hunting is like, I hunt during hunting season, and then I fish during fish season. Like for me, I had to give up fishing pretty much to take my hunting to the next level. And that was hard because I love fishing. Like I hardly ever fish anymore because I just don't have the time. Like, do I want to kill a big deer or catch fish? I want to kill a big deer. So I gave up something I loved for something I love even more.
Well, I gave up fishing a long time ago, but I didn't.
Yeah, because you didn't love it.
It hasn't helped me kill deer. I can tell you that.
Well, yeah, like a lot of people want to be great at like a lot of things, and it's hard. Like it's really hard. Like now I got a family. It's even harder being people that have family, kids, or like a demanding job. Like you can't do it all, and to be really good at 5 different things in life, it's impossible. It's just, at least for me, I'm not that talented where I can be good at being the best father, being the best husband, and fish and shoot 3D and compete in 3D. Like I didn't even compete. I'm probably not going to compete 3D for a while because of family obligations. Like I got to give stuff up. But my wife's going to allow me to go hunting because she's pretty rad. She might not agree with it sometimes, but she understands. Like it's a calling. It's that I can't not, answer the call, if you will.
So what do you say to guys like myself that are super passionate about deer hunting, but it doesn't amount to like that level of success?
It's because you're ready to put your bow down and go out with a gun.
Yeah. Well, success is I guess you call it like a relative term. Like if you define success by inches, you know, you're always going to come up short, basically. Because there's always going to be somebody that's going to kill a bigger deer. You know, it's like people with money. You're chasing something that you really shouldn't be chasing. Like for me, I don't care. I mean, I don't have one deer in the record books. I don't have one Pope and Young deer. Some of them are close, but I don't have my name in the record books.
But they're trophies.
Like I chase it because it's like it's a mature animal for the area. Like it's a step above, you know. And if your area, say 100-inch deer is big because you got gun season and those whoppers are an anomaly. You know, like some areas I hunt, like in the salt marsh, there's one big deer. Like I'm literally I'm chasing a unicorn. You know, I might not ever kill that unicorn, but I'm going to give it my best. The odds of me killing that deer is like, 0.0001%. Other areas, there might be 3 120s or 3 130s running around. Well, the odds are greater in those areas, but that's about as big as you're going to get in some areas. But if you live in an area where 100-inch deer is big and you can kill something that's 90 to 100, like you're killing a mature animal, like that's the end game, trying to shoot something that's mature and old, be it 100 inches or 140 or 90 inches. If it's 2, 3, 4 years old, like to me, that's what I'm after. When you see those deer, it's like, that's probably a 3 or 4 year old deer. I'm going to shoot it. I can do something a lot of people can't do. And you're going to eat tag soup a lot. I'll tell you that much. There's a lot of seasons. It's like I went 3 years without, I think, drawing my bow back on a buck because I just didn't see anything that was old enough, and that was frustrating. Frustrating as all hell. But you just keep going. It's like, all right, I didn't get. You can say, yeah, I'm not good enough. Then how can you make yourself good enough? And if you got to, it's good to be humbled and get your ass kicked. And you're either going to learn from it, or complain about it. Basically, in my mind, I can make all excuses in the world. If I didn't kill a deer, what can I do to kill a deer? If I got to raid more, scout more, and your seasons are constantly changing. If you're hunting how you hunted last year, you're already behind the 8 ball. That deer already knows what you're going to be doing. And that's the aggressive tactics of like Dan, Andre, some of these guys, the hunting public are super aggressive because you got to be. Like if you're going to be sitting on the sidelines, like waiting to get into the game, you'll be waiting a long time, man.
Right.
And so obviously I talk a lot about like my goals and failures and like aspirations and things like that. John, what is your like motivation for the season, or like what are your goals, or like where are you at like at this point?
I just want to, I'll shoot it. I've seen some nice bucks up north and stuff. I'd like to get back up there, but I'll probably just end up shooting, a doe or something or two. I don't really care to shoot a small buck. Obviously it's always been I got enough horns and stuff. I don't even have mounts in my house. They're still in my dad's old house. But it's like after I put everything into my Montana trip this year. Obviously, 3 weeks out there and chasing all those animals. But my motivation right now is to get back. I have to be honest that I was slacking a little bit. Normally I shoot my bow a lot. And with everything going on, trying to get stuff ready, obviously getting the bow late, I've been struggling with target panic again. And so I need to get back. I need to get my bow, I need to build my confidence back in my equipment and myself. And so my motivation right now is to get back to shooting good, because I shot at a coyote up in the UP, and I did misjudge. I hadn't even judged the distance over there. I thought it was close to 40 yards, but it wouldn't have mattered. I admittedly I punched the trigger on a coyote, or what the hell, And it's just, that all started, with, my trip out west. Everything was just kind of I'm not making excuses. I've just completely failed, out there, and the confidence just drained out of me, and for me, it's a big factor. I think it is for a lot of people. If you don't have confidence in your equipment and yourself, shit goes the wrong way. So I'm gonna work on that. That's my motivator right now. So if I get a chance to get out, I need to just kill some shit and get the confidence back. So if I went out and a 150 come out in front of me, or like some monster buck, I'd probably just blow it again. I'd shit my pants and Forrest Gump it or something again. So I think that happens to more people than they'd like to admit, but I'm admitting it right now. I've lost confidence and I'm failing.
Well, I think, that and Greg, you can probably speak on this a little bit, not necessarily from like a target panic type thing, but like the opportunity type thing. So I think the people that don't like that are part-time, or that are, that have limited time and they want to try to maximize the time that they do have. I know that I've fallen victim to this, and it was usually leading up to, when I did kill a deer with a bow. But the first shot that I would take on a live animal, like, I would screw it up because I would think in my head that this was my one opportunity. Like,
it's my one opportunity. Don't fuck it up.
Yeah, and like instead of saying like this is what I need to do to succeed, I'm saying don't screw it up, don't screw it up, don't screw it up, and you're already in the wrong type of mindset. And I'd imagine that, that shooting targets, kind of like under those pressure situations when you are shooting in tournaments and stuff like that, if you're saying don't mess it up, then you're already you're in your own head at that point.
Yep. Yeah, you're planting seeds in the ground. If you plant don't miss, you're watering that seed, that's going to grow, Or if you plant the seed, this thing's fucking dead, and you're watering that thing, there's nothing that you basically can't do when a deer comes in the view. Like with that buck I lost in PA, I missed him. Yeah, it's 23 yards. He dropped down, and I got a shot at him. And I ended up shooting him, like I said, in the liver, and never found him. Like, I was hurt. Like it pained me, like it hurt me. And I seen another deer. When that buck I killed came in, there was no way in hell that deer was getting out of that little pocket alive. Like, that was my mindset. I was like, I feel sorry for next year that comes in, because I was super motivated. And I mean, that buck I shot this year was probably, that has to go down as one of my coolest shots with the bow I've had in a long time. Because I was like full draw, swinging from the saddle side to side, swinging around the tree, all while full draw and squeezing, and I ended up shooting between these trees. Like, there was no question in my mind that I wasn't going to kill that deer. I was like, I was going to make the best shot possible, and I literally made the best shot possible. Like, a lot of guys would, look at that shot, the deer I lost, and view on that like the old can't cry over spilled milk mentality. We're going to lose deer from time to time. You just got to just write it off. It sucks, but you just got to let it go. Like, I don't even really talk about that deer I missed that much or I lost, because I don't want to reinforce that, moment, so to speak. I just use that moment. It's like, all right, no, it's not happening again. I need to be better, because I don't want that deer to suffer or make a shitty shot because I felt rushed or thinking about something I had really no control over, something in the past. So, the best thing to do is just, especially when a deer comes in, just think what you want to happen. Aim, breathe, go through all those little, whatever it is, cues that you got to use. But if you say don't miss or don't fuck this up, there's a 50% chance you're going to miss or fuck it up.
Or you're screwing with a camera, trying to get all the cameras turned on, and then your camera arm is screwed up and it's freaking drifting. Not saying that's an excuse, but that shit all plays a factor into your mental,
Yeah.
mental game.
For me, like for filming, when I was filming, like I tried filming that deer I shot this year. It was impossible. Because he was moving around so much. I'm like, I don't care about the camera. I would kick that thing off the tree. But especially like during the rut, it's hard to film during the rut. Self-film. The guys that do it, it's pretty cool. But when I was filming and killing the deer in October, I like it because it doesn't allow me to focus on the horn, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to anticipate where the deer is going to be, and I got the camera. I'm looking at the deer corner of my eye. Like the camera becomes center focus for the time being. So I can't look at the deer and get that buck fever, get the adrenaline, the shakes or whatever. I get the shakes after I shoot a deer. That's when I fall apart.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because that deer that I killed on camera, that's exactly what it was. There was so much other stuff going on that it like completely took me out of that. Like, holy shit, this is probably like the fourth biggest deer I've ever seen in Michigan. Like walking in right here, I didn't even like. It was just like,
yeah.
And when I look back at the video and like when I'm up in the tree now, like range and stuff and looking at different trees, like I shot that deer at 17 yards. And like when I'm ranging stuff, like with my rangefinder, like as I'm getting set up now, I'm like, shit, that's where 17 yards is. That deer was like
fucking close.
That was close, like.
Yeah.
I mean, but in the moment, it didn't seem like that. It was just like, okay, he's right there. Here's this camera. Okay, all right, get the full draw. He's going to be right there and shoot him. And from what you said, like in the other thing where you said like, okay, well this deer is going to die, like. Where I got the full draw on this other deer, like I'm fairly certain this was the second encounter with that deer because the first sit I had in that tree, I had or not in that tree but in that area. I kind of stage hunted out there, but there was this buck chasing does, and some of the does came right in, and the one peed right in front of me at like 28 yards, and he started angling towards him, and I mean literally in my head, I grabbed my bow and I said I'm going to kill him right there. Like I knew it wasn't like I was freaked out like where in the past I would have been like, oh my God, what do I do? Like whatever. It wasn't, there was none of that. And so I think maybe like when you talk about like that sort of motivation or like whatever you see as success, like for me, that's probably something that I'm overlooking as far as like being successful is like not necessarily that, I saw the deer that they were there, but like just being able to change my mindset and have actual confidence in like, when he gets there, I'm going to kill him. He just didn't get there,
Mm-hmm. And, and when it comes to like the shot, for me, it's like, if I grab my bow, if I actually pick it up off the hanger, I have a mindset that's like my trigger, it's like whatever I'm pulling back on, like, the goal is to quick, clean kill. Like it's not like, oh, I'm going to try and after the deer, I pick the bow up. For me, like I don't pick my bow up unless I intend to shoot whatever I see. And a lot of guys will pick the bow up on every deer they see, or girls or whatever. And for me, I don't think that's a good idea. If you got little fawns come in, you pick it up. And I mean, you can see fawns come, your bow can still sit there. But for me, my trigger, my kill trigger is I pick the bow up. If I pick that bow up and that thing comes in the wheelhouse, I'm crushing it. Like my buddies, every deer they see, they pick the bow up. And they get all, and I feel like they get jacked up. They get worked up, because they're, a doe comes in. If you don't have, like for me, if I'm in a doe area, if I want to kill a doe, like I have to tell myself I'm going to shoot a doe. Like, because I'm not going to be sitting there at 9 o'clock, a doe comes in and shoot it. Unless, it's injured or something. Like for me, if I want to shoot a doe, I need to have my mindset going in that day, I'll kill a doe. Like I'm meat hunting. If I'm in an area where it's bucks, so it's like I'm buck hunting. So I don't even bother picking my bow up if it's a doe or anything, or a little buck. That's just something I do that works for me.
So
if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a little bit to unpack there because like I can think of situations in the rut where like I think, oh shit, there's deer. Like anything can happen.
Or when there's several spots where there's, quite a few deer, and when they get in on you, and all of a sudden, then you're starting to reach over and grab a bow when the buck steps out, or pops out. But it's a good, a mental trigger, like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of guys too, like they don't work on, like their execution trigger, their kill trigger. Like, if you talk to a lot of hunters, what's your process? I'm going to go up and shoot it. Like they have no set plans. And I think for me, like that's the worst. Like for me, like I have a pick the bow up, like that's the trigger I'm going to kill. Come to full draw, I love my bow. And then for me, it's like I take my thumb off the peg and I put my thumb on my finger. Like that is like another cue, like trigger, like, all right, I'm in this, and then I go into my shot thing. Like guys will just shoot like blindly. They pick the bow up and it's like, they don't really, like they lose a sense of what they're doing. And for me, that would never work. Like I'm pretty, muscle memory kicks in. Like I like to be the same, how I shoot at home, how I shoot in the tree, and I don't think a lot of people have the same process. It changes from shot to shot or moment to moment, or I had to make a quick shot because the deer was moving. Well, that's a horrible way to do it. Like I had a split second shoot. Like that is like the worst. You hear people's stories. I grabbed my bow and I had a split second to shoot. The odds of you making a good shot, there's a good chance you're going to mess that shot up because you're rushed. If you're not aware of your surroundings, or that branch, or what's happening around your tree, like you're just setting yourself up for disaster. And for me, I would personally, like I shoot a hooker release out of Michigan there, and I've been at full draw on bucks, and I've been so tense, I can't get the shot to go off and deer walks. I'm more content. I'm happy that the shot didn't break. That means I was rushing the shot, and I thought I was going to make a bad shot if the thing did go off. So for me, I'd rather not shoot a deer than shoot something in the guts, or flank it somewhere and watch it, run off injured. I'd rather let it walk off and like, well, yeah, that's on me. I can live with that. The deer's still alive, and I was just an idiot for that moment.
It's interesting that you say that because I've never really, thought about that. Again, that's one of those things where I think like we dwell on like when shit goes wrong. Like every time that something goes right, it's like, okay, that was cool. Or, trying to think back on all the deer that I've killed with a bow. Like I don't really remember, however many does I've shot or like whatever. But I always remember the ones that I screwed up bad. Like and those ones, I could go through and just name them off. Bam, 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 bam. But like with me, like I draw back and I get down and I make sure that I can see my peep and my bubble and everything. And then that's like what I feel like kind of calms me down. I'm like, okay, so I can make the shot. It'll be okay. But I wanted to ask John, like, so now, like you're kind of like freaking out from all of this stuff. But like last year, you made like one of the most ridiculous processes to shoot a deer that I can think of, where you like drew back and like let down or like whatever, had to lower your tether so you could shoot underneath.
Well,
something.
I was in the standing position. I just lowered myself. I just went to the kneeling position, or knee against the tree. But yeah, last year,
I'm just trying to unwrap like the process. Like,
right.
Was it like you had to do something else? So it was like.
No, you mean with my process last year compared to this year?
Yeah.
The last year, even going into it this year, like as building up, like I said, I've rebuilt the bow and did all that, and then I had a bent axle, and they had overnight axles to me, so I was working on that literally the week before I'm leaving, which was, and then I worked on the bow like for a whole day, and thought I had everything dialed back in, but it wasn't, like my Hoyt. You know what I'm saying? My Hoyt, I have 100% confidence. I can shoot the bale at 100 yards, and never miss the bag normally. But so then, last year when I shot that doe, it was 47 yards or something. And it was and I was waiting, I was filming my son, and he had his bow hanging up in the tree behind him. So he couldn't get a shot. So then they got like his wind spooked around, whatever. Everyone's heard the story, but I was filming. That's what happened. I ranged where she was walking, and I'm trying to get her in camera, and I looked down and like, oh yeah, the deer's still in the viewfinder. I ranged it one more time, and I drew back and just went through my shot process. Same. I drew back, got to my anchor point, centered my peep, level everything, and the shot broke, and it was just. Everything worked as normal, and then this year started out. It started out with the antelope and watching that arrow fly all like a corkscrew. Of course there was a little bit of shit in the bottom cam, but it was just that. Then it started playing in my head, and then I got out to Ed's house and started shooting it, and it was terrible. Like I'm shooting and the arrows just flying. I can see the knock just corkscrewing. So then it's like I start working on the bow, and then it starts. I'm losing confidence. That stuff just starts playing in my mind. I'm laying there in bed the night before we left, like, oh, it should be fine. Well, you shouldn't go into a hunt with that thought. It should be fine, or it'll be fine. But in the back of your head, you're thinking. And then after I shot, when I started shooting at the grouse and stuff, and my arrow, like normally I never have a problem with my arrows hitting. Everyone talks about broadhead. Fixed blade broadheads are always going to be off a little bit from your field tips. I've always, like with our bows, when we went to Idaho, they were like right on. Field tip to broadhead. Not much difference, right?
Yeah, I was cutting fletches, and you're like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, don't shoot
Right.
at the same spot.
So, and then with this bow, it was literally like 3 to 4 inch right from I'd shoot a field tip, put it right in the 10 ring, 3 to 4 inches right, or 2 to 3, and it's like, man. So I resighted in, and they're consistent, but then it's getting some kind of kick in it. Obviously the arrow flight's not good, and everything I did to that bow, I could not get that out of it. And then I shot that mule deer doe, and I was completely calm on that. I was just, it was meat. It wasn't a rush shot. It was just, I'm just going to fill my, deer tag and watch that arrow. At that point, I had switched over to Litzinger. It's got a little bit wider throat. So, because I was getting some string pinch, with the factory Easton knock. So I'd swap back out to the nocturnals, and I watched that lit knock just like, and hit her back a little bit. Luckily, it was a hard, pretty decent quartering away shot, so it still went through her vitals, and she didn't last long. She died, and we found her no problem. But that was just another,
So it's just everything has built up to.
Yeah, it's just been building up, and then with the elk, that was the first elk I ever drew my bow back on, and it was a nice bow. It's like we had talked about, like when your opportunity, to shoot a big buck, you don't want it to be your very first opportunity to screw it up. You need some under your belt. Well, I've only been elk hunting twice, and here's a really nice bull. I'm pretty sure he was a 6x6. If I could zoom up on that film, I could see if he's got double brows or not. And everything's just going through my head, and I didn't even go through my shot process. It was just like I fucking blanked out. Just big bull, got to kill him. And bad shot him right through the top of the back.
So how do you break out of that, Greg? Like that, you're hearing this and you're probably just rubbing your forehead there going, oh my God, like what a year.
You just gotta, like let it go. Each shot is a new shot. Like if shot goes offline, you gotta look at it and be like, all right, I can't let that happen again. Try to learn from it, and make sure you're aware of it. But that's not your main goal. Your main goal is to execute a good shot. I think a lot of people will dwell on the bad shots, and that's a bad habit to get into. It's like that hour's in the past. Like you can't change it. Think about it. Watering that seed isn't going to make it come back. So you got to just be like, all right, that's not going to happen again. and that's very hard for some people because I don't think they practice it or train it on a regular basis. They train it in summertime, or when they're shooting in the backyard with their friends, or maybe some 3D shoots. But like once hunting season rolls around, most people stop shooting their bow. They start taking shortcuts. They're tired. I don't have time to shoot my bow. I'd rather go hunting. Like you got to stay vigilant and shoot your bow. And even just that, the old 1 hour a day, or 2 hours a week or something. Make those shots like super important. I know for me, like once hunting season starts, like I don't shoot my bow a lot. I'll just 1 or 2 hours a week is enough to know I'm still good.
So, like, John's a lot like you are in a sense of like an equipment based guy. Like, know your equipment inside and out, all of that. I mean, and you to the point where you're shooting a solid freaking release that has no moving parts. That's like, it can't, I mean, outside of shooting fingers or something, like there is not another, way to remove variables. So like, have you encountered it in the past where you have had an equipment issue where like you couldn't get it out of your head or like something like that?
Yeah. I've had it like competing. Like I'll get it because everything's so micromanaged. Everything's down, the bow's perfect dialed in, and then like two strands, or you see like a little bit of like a strand break on the strings when your peep rotates a little bit. So as you draw back and that peep kind of slides a little bit, you're like, fuck, my peep sight. And the moment's already gone because you're not focusing on the target. You're like, fuck, peep sight. So, or, I've had, my rest move, you're shooting and then you're shooting like really well and something happens. Then you're like, you get it back, good to go. And then you're like focused on the rest a lot, or your D-loop breaks and you get all frustrated because the D-loop breaks, instead of like, well, it's equipment is going to break from time to time. Like you can't allow it to get in your head. It's very hard, especially like when you open that door, because we're negative based. We love that negative, feedback or negative reinforcement, human beings in general. So you open that door, it's like, oh yeah, it's the bow's fault. It's this fault. No, it's not. Like you just got to just stop all that stuff, fix the bow, and get it shooting good, and be like, I'm killing. Like I'm crushing it.
Well, there you go, John. I mean,
I did it when I got back after the first, what was it, 2 weeks, or no, it was more than that. When I got back to Ed's house, I took my PSE and put it in the box, and I pulled out the Hoyt. The Hoyt had just my single pin on it, so I did swap out, put my 5-pin slider on there, and so I had to go through and resight it all in, get the pin gapping. But then when I got that done and I was shooting, and it was just money. And I was going to go back out, for 3 days solo, and it just ended up, the weather was, it got way colder, and then the elk were all on private anyway. So I was like, I ended up just, cutting my trip a little bit short. But at that point, when I went out with that bow, I was like what Greg's saying. I'm like, I'm going to go kill something now. No more fucking around. I'm going to go kill something. And then, since I got home, I've been shooting, my bow is still in the truck. I was at the club the other night, and I'm shooting the PSE, still just trying to, work out the bugs with that bow, but I've just lost a lot of confidence in it. I never had a bow that I can't get that tune out of it. I was trying to bear shaft. I had a bear shaft tune to 20 yards, and I was grouping them right in there, and then I moved back to the 35-yard mark, and I'm indoors, and now and then all of a sudden I guess maybe it was me. I'm getting tired. 35 yards is a long shot for a bear shaft. Trying to tune it. Everything's got to be right on money, but it consistently was hitting like 6 or 8 inches low right compared to from 20 to 35, and so like, well, I had built up a little bit of confidence at that 20-yard mark. Then when I moved back, thinking, okay, we'll see how this goes, and then it was way off. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch, it's not. But
Yeah, that's a dangerous game, like bear shafting. It's tough to bear shaft. I've had a bow. I couldn't get bear shaft past 15. But that thing threw whatever broadhead you put on it, great. Like a 4 flats, a 3 flats helical. I was shooting the 4-inch veins with a hard helical,
mm-hmm.
and it just cleaned whatever needed to be cleaned up. And that bow just was great. And for me, it's like, if I can bear shaft at 15, like that's kind of like my spin. Like I like to go 25, but if I can get it to shoot at 15, I'll throw some fletchings on it and put some broadheads on it and let it rip. And usually you can kind of tweak the rest a little bit, and I've really simplified my tuning process as the older I get, because of time, and I just want to maximize. Like I want to have fun shooting. I don't want to tinker to the point where it's exhausting. Like I'm like micro tuning like everything. I ain't got time for that anymore. Like I did all that stuff, and it's cool. It was fun, but I'd rather just shoot.
Right.
If I got to bump my rest, a little bit to get my broadheads to be shooting, or my broadheads and field points are within an inch of one another, I'm happy with that. Like I can live with that, because, I got a figure a 3-inch, plus or minus window left or right or up and down, and I'm still killing that deer.
Right.
And it made fun for me. It made shooting more enjoyable, especially like my hunting bow, like this carbon Icon I got. Like it's just such a great bow. Like it's just me and the bow just mesh well. It's fun to shoot, even though it's light. I mean, I was shooting 75 yards, 80 yards with my sight bubble. I was using my sight bubble with 80, and I was stacking them broadheads at 80 yards. And I'm like, this is just fun shooting. It felt cool to shoot my bow all the time. It wasn't like expecting these awesome groups. It was like whatever. Some days were better than others, and it was nice actually to have fun shooting my bow and tuning it, and not feel like I had to be super precise, if you will.
Right.
It's funny when you were talking about like being out on the target course, and like how you said, well, you're already out of the moment and like it's already like screwed up. Like I couldn't help but think of like the shit that you see in movies, or like the stuff that you tell your kids, like, oh hey, you're a little off balance. Put this rock in your pocket; it'll make a better shot. Because it's like, there is so much like mental. If you can just say, okay, well, this will make me shoot better. It's like the
placebo
thing. Well, yeah, but it's like when when you're fishing, like, oh, you're holding your mouth wrong, like,
Yeah,
like
you gotta piss on your finger.
Like that type of shit that's completely irrelevant, but it breaks you out of that
mental,
like that mental game.
And a lot of too, like for me, like I had that shoulder injury, so I didn't shoot probably, I don't even know, from March till August. I don't think I really shot my bow at all, or any bow for that matter, because I was having the shoulder issues. And then having that time away, like reset, like the mental reset, I wasn't doing anything. Like I come into it with a fresh open mind. Like sometimes putting the bow down for a week, no shooting, just letting everything just like disappear, it's a good mental reset, physical mental reset. Because picking up bad habits, bad mental, physical habits, it happens fast, man. Like you don't realize that it happens, and you're like, why am I doing this? Like, what is going on? You figure out what's going on. You're like, how did it even get to this point? And it's so quick when it happens. Like you'll train for 3 or 4 months to fix a problem, and then you'll pick up a bad habit in like 4 shots. And then it's like you're down that rabbit hole. You're like, what the fuck happened? Like, I was so good yesterday or the day before. Like, what's happening? And for me, like putting the bow down is like the best thing. It's just mental reset for a week. Just don't even shoot my bow. And that's why I don't hunt season. I don't really shoot a lot, because I don't want to pick up bad habits. I go out and I'll shoot my one arrow. If it's off, I'm like, I'll shoot another arrow and use that and correct it. I'm like, I'm good. Just leave it be. So that way I'm not constantly just, in a state of, am I doing this right? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing right?
So one of the things I wanted to get back to, we were talking a little bit about like that starting that process and like when you pick up your bow. One of the things that I'm like I seen a post on Facebook the other day where they were talking about like what are your goals, like your hunting goals, you know, and guys were saying like, oh, I want to kill a booner, I want to hunt deer in all 50 states, you know, all these different things. Like I would like to shoot a deer off the ground, like that's one of my goals is to I'd like to kill an elk with a bow, and I'd like to shoot a deer off of the ground. And never done it. I don't think I've. 2017 I had the worst season of my life, and I missed a deer twice, 2 or 3 times off the ground. And it turned out that when I got over there, I thought I had hit the deer, but it had an arrow in it already, and I actually hit the arrow that was in it. And so when I got over there, I found my arrow with no blood on it, and I had white fletchings, white cresting, like the whole works. No blood, but there's blood in the snow, and I'm like, what the fuck? But beyond that, like I've never shot at a deer from the ground or anything like that. So that's like one of my goals. So
did you find that deer?
No, it ran away. I like chased it down, and then it ran off. And so I was like, well, I'll come back after I hunt and see like what is the story. And I didn't know that it had been hit. My brother and brother-in-law Chris were out wandering around. They're like, did you shoot a deer tonight? And I'm like, well, they asked me what color of fletching I was using. I'm like, they're white. And I'm like, they're like, well, did you shoot a deer tonight? And I'm like, not exactly. And I told them the story, and they're like, they were maybe 500 yards down the way out scouting and looking around when they jumped up this deer that had this orange arrow as a crossbow bolt stuck in its back hip. And so when I shot at this deer quartering away,
you hit the fletching.
I hit the fletchings, and it dove down underneath it, but it must have wiggled it enough so that a couple drops of blood came out in the snow. And I'm like, what in the fuck?
What are the odds of that?
Exactly. You know, just the most randomest like thing possible. But so like when you're talking about picking up your bow, like on the ground, if you're not still hunting, so like you're sitting behind this oak tree, and if you've been watching any of the Hunting Public's videos recently, like Zach was just rattling and doing, they've been doing some ridiculous rattling, but his bow was on the other side, you know, and that deer runs up like that 3-foot deer you're talking about.
Yeah.
And his bow's behind him, you know. So how are you like setting up on the ground for these setups?
Like I sat the salt marsh a few times on the ground this year, and I have a little stool, and I have a ground peg, and it's a little bow holder. You know, it's got a little, I stick it in the ground, and I set the bow in it, and I pretty much set it up where, much like in my saddle, where when I set the strap up, like the handles, like I don't really have to move. I just have to go for it. And I keep the bow like in between my legs for the most part, or sometimes I'll put it to like my on the outside of my left leg, so I can drop down to one knee and kind of shoot. Like I keep it where, because on the ground, you know, and like especially in the marsh, I don't really have much cover. I got like a little patch of reeds or something, so my movement has to be bare minimum. And it's difficult. It sucks because you get picked off 90% of the time. And like you can't really make a mistake. You have to literally be perfect, you know. And for me, when I hunt the ground, and like in the rut, it's different because deer kind of run from all over. But like in the early season, when they're a little more predictable, I like to set up where if I want to be on a deer trail, like they're kind of quartering away from me, you know, so that way I can move a little bit more. Like I'd rather shoot a deer at 25 quartering away than 15 broadside, because this way I won't get picked off. And I think like a lot of people, you know, and I think I learned that from my dad too. When you sit from the ground, like you got to be ready all the time. You know, you can't like reach for your bow. You can't really move a lot. Like have some good back cover, you know, sitting on a stool, either some reeds in front of you or like in a little ditch. So somewhere, and you have to be on high alert all the time. And like in a tree stand, you know, and saddle, like elevated, you can get away with moving it. From the ground, like it's super hard. Especially, you know, like a lot of times if the deer's coming at you, like that's like the worst, because you're like, shit. Like it's like just bowing right down at you, and you're like, I can't even move. And, you know, if they get in front of you, like walking at you, you know, we're just a giant blob. You know, it never works out well for me in the marsh because I just don't have the cover for it. So from when I hunt the ground, I'm even from years of hunting in the marsh and the ground, and I take it into the woods. I find myself setting up the same way, even if I got back cover. Like I really don't want to move. Like I'll put my backpack to the right. I know where all my like I can strap my arm down, get my water. Like I keep everything super compact, narrow, and keep my minimal. You keep my silhouette as small as possible, and keep my movements, you know, as light as possible. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and so when you're hunting these like salt marshes, because like it sounds like you're hunting this unicorn. It seems like
Yeah.
somewhat of a lower percentage hunt to a degree. Like, how do you make the decision to subject yourself to that? I guess in a sense of like, are there different areas that have different tags at different times, and so sometimes that's open, or it just seems to be like the best wind for a spot that you've got down there?
Yeah, like now I'm more into the trail camera phase, so I usually have an idea of from time stamping. All right, bucks start showing up in this area second week in November. In this salt marsh, there's a big doe population, so first week in November. And I usually, because some spots are only good for a couple of days, and then there's nothing there, nothing worth shooting anyway. So that's where camera intel comes in. I do it, on a 3 to 4 year pattern. You're like, all right, these bucks are doing this for 3 years. Odds are next year it's going to be the same thing. And you kind of try to hedge your bets. You get the right tide, the right wind for those 3 days, which sometimes you don't. Like was it last year? I had a great spot. When I was off, the wind was awful and the tide was awful. I didn't have a chance to hunt it, so I had to take the canoe in with the tide, sit on the ground and take the canoe back out. And the camera was there. The camera got good deer, but the wind was always wrong. So I was like, well, I can't really, that's out of my control. But it's, the low percentage areas, I want to do something that 99% of the population can't do. Not because they can't do it, because they won't do it, I guess is probably a better way to, like, they won't subject themselves to that type of torture. For me, like, I like that. Like, I like that misery and pain, I guess. Like, it's not for everybody. That's for bow hunting the salt marsh isn't for everybody. It's a labor of love, passion, and stubbornness.
So you mentioned the trail cameras there, and that
Yeah.
the deer were there. It was just a bad wind for you to exit or enter and exit, and the bad tide for getting in there. Because it seems like that's one thing, when we're looking at trail camera pictures and stuff like that, we're looking at, okay, what are these deer doing, and what was the wind at that time? Because, sometimes we're near bedding or whatever, so we're thinking, okay, well, the deer are using the wind, but a lot of times the deer are just going to be moving through these areas anyway, and the wind just aids them in, staying alive, essentially. So
yeah.
So is that the case, that the deer were there regardless of the wind? It was just a bad for you to set up?
Well, it's a great win for him, because a lot of, like, I hunt the off wind. Like, a lot of my spots, most people won't hunt them because it's a terrible win for humans. Well, it's a great win for the deer. So you got to find that little turn in the trail where you can get that little, get your scent. Hopefully it doesn't blow down that trail or cross that trail. So, like, I hunt the off winds a lot, like old school Miles Keller tactic, because the deer are going to move through there. Like, you can't hunt the deer on the wind that's good for you. You got to hunt it for the wind that's good for them. And a lot of people, I think, mistake that. Like, I need a northwest wind. Well, that's a great wind for you. It's awful wind for the deer. So why would he bed there in northwest wind? Well, it's good for me. Yeah, but would the deer be there in northwest wind? And that's where camera data comes in, and you'll see, like, all right, they like a northeast wind. Always see that deer on a northerly based wind, northeast, northwest. Southwest, nothing. So you take that data, and you look at the tide. All right, full moon, super high tide, super moon, they're coming off these islands because the islands get flooded. They come off early. Well, all right, I got to be there earlier, in the day. It's like there's a whole lot of variables to the salt marsh that a like a swamp hunter don't have, or like just the inland reeds or cattail guys don't have to deal with. I'm pretty much like a duck hunter, but I'm really a deer hunter because you got to play the tide,
Yeah, I mean, I was guessing that when you were saying you want to shoot these deer like quartering away, because I'm like thinking about like
Yeah,
how the hell are you entering? I'm trying to like picture a scenario of like where
yeah,
the deer is, and like for you to enter and exit like without spooking the deer, the wind would have to be like perpendicular to that quartering away, and like
yeah,
they'd be like, because the deer is essentially coming from behind you, just just off, which is kind
yeah,
of like counterintuitive to the way that most people would set up.
yeah. And for me too, and like something that I've done, because once you get that close to bedding, sometimes like they know that some deer is going to smell you there, and other deer is going to smell you. If I'll actually cross a deer trail where I want the deer to stop, because and then I'll touch a few branches, so hopefully they smell the other side of the trail, so I can get draw back a little bit. Like there's some tactics that I've been tinkering with throughout the years and trying to really find something that works. If I got to cross a trail, that's have to be that's where I have to shoot. Before I cross it, like I'll touch the other side of the trail. So I know they say they're coming from my left to right. Well, I got to cross that trail at 20 yards. Well, I'll touch all that stuff on the left side of the trail. So if he goes up, he smells it, he stops. It takes his eyes off of me, and I can maybe get a shot off. It's a crazy thing I've been working on, and shot a few does doing that. It's just never had a buck coming to do that. So I know it works for deer, just haven't seen a buck big enough to shoot.
I mean, I would say that that's where the full-time deer hunter in you comes out, right? Because like I couldn't even I would say that 90% of the population isn't thinking in that sort of terms.
Yeah, because like when because the cattail, like the salt marsh, is called marsh grass, where it's only like 12 inches high, and then you got like little bit pockets of cattail. Well, these deer they don't want to be out in the open. So when they cross these little open spots where it's a good to shoot at, it's great for me, horrible for them. So they'll actually cut across these little open spots fast because they don't want to be exposed. Well, the only way to stop them is to leave your scent there. Hopefully that stops them for a second or slows them down. You can actually get a shot off, because ain't nothing worse than a buck come in like, I'm going to shoot this deer, and then once it hits it gets real sparse cover, they're sayonara, man. They're out. Boing! And then you're like, hey, thanks. Never see you again. Awesome. And they run to the next little patch of reeds or whatever, they can get some cover. It's just different things that I've tried over years. Like I said, I've been hunting weird, strange ways ever since I can remember. And 99% of them are failures, but it's also cool to, when something does work, they're like, oh, that's pretty cool, or like setting up in a spot like, this isn't going to work, and the deer will actually come through not as you expected. They kind of come down like head on the ground, and they're trying to just get across this open spot real fast. They're not really paying attention. So the deer's moving pretty fast. Like you could move fast on your draw, So you find out you years of hunting these marshes, they come through this area pretty fast. Well, all right, I got decent cover. Well, he's moving. Well, I can move a little bit too. Like the whitetail drilling guys. Like the deer's moving. Well, they'll move, because as the deer's moving going through brush, it's not like they don't have a clear sight picture because they got everything's happening in their face. So if they're moving in some heavy cover, like you can move. You can draw your bow, pick your bow up, or stand up if you don't have a shot. And you got to try something to make that shot happen. And like the whitetail drilling guys, they're even like the hunting public now, like there's a lot of times it don't work out, but the times that it does work out is like, that's awesome, man. Like you did something that was different and unique.
And so you've killed 2 great bucks this year, I would say. I mean, I know you're pretty happy with them. What does the rest of your season look like going into, for your job, the busiest season of the year?
I'm pretty much done until January. Like I might get out here and there half a day, you know, and like right now I just rely on camera intel. And I mean, not to jinx myself, but I haven't seen a mature deer in January in probably a decade. Like a big deer. I mean, I've seen some nice deer. You know, I had that busted up half rack, I think, or busted up deer last year came through super fast. I wasn't ready in the marsh, you know, and he just went by my shooting lane too fast. But to see like a true whopper, it's been over a decade. So my goal is to shoot a mature deer in January, be it from the ground or tree or whatever needs to be done. And I found some sheds and some out in the marsh, and I'm going to camera bomb the shit out of them after gun season. And I know the bucks are coming in there after gun season, you know, or something. And hopefully I just get something, a picture of a big deer. Because, you know, last year I didn't get one picture of anything worth shooting in December, January. So it's hard, you know, like mentally, because it's like, I was going to shoot some does. Well, I got a freezer full of meat. So it's like my January is like, I'm not really going to go shoot some does. I don't have a place to put the meat. Yeah, 3 deer this year, you know, and the buck from Pennsylvania. I mean, I got a lot of meat back from that thing, like a lot. I went to a different butcher, and I'm like, oh, I think my last butcher's been ripping me off. So it's like, I can eat deer meat. We can eat deer meat, you know, every day for probably like the next 3 months, and I'd probably still have deer meat.
So for that goal, or like how you're setting up on that, does it all then depend on the cameras? I mean, is that going to be what puts you in an area? Like if you don't see anything on the camera, are you gonna like be less likely to hunt?
Yeah, like I said, it's if nothing there worth shooting, why am I going to waste my time? And like I said, and I learned from like Johnny Stewart and, you know, my buddy Rick on Long Island, like good camera intel is important, because and how you set your cameras up. Like before I'd set like one camera in an area or two. Now I'll set out like 6. You know, so it's like guaranteed one of those 6 cameras has got to get something, because you're just like camera bombing this whole section. If I'm not getting anything that's like, oh, I'm going to wake up, you know, go hunt some freezing cold weather to see nothing or see some does, it's hard. Like I said, the motivation got to bed if there's nothing that you want to shoot, like a bunch of 1.5 years. I don't really care to see a 1.5 years. Like it just doesn't, you know, it has no draw for me personally. So, I mean, I'll go out because I like hunting, you know, and I'll still scout and maybe scout new areas. You know, maybe get lucky or something, stumble upon a deer. But I'm really going to try and rely on my camera intel this year. I got 2 spots. I'm going to just put out, you know, 10 cameras or so between the 2 spots, and hopefully I get something. And
what's the schedule then that you're checking those cameras at? I mean, I can't imagine that maybe you got 10 cell cameras, but that seems expensive.
No, I got the cheapest cameras, because if they get stolen, I don't feel like burning the woods down. You know, I just check them. You know, like in the wintertime, it's because usually by January they're going to be on the food source. So I got 2 spots where I found them sheds. I know they bed there when the food's there. Well, the food has been the same this year that it was the years I found those sheds. So odds are, if a mature buck's in the area, he's going to be bedding somewhere near there. So I'll put it on those food sources. Not too close to bedding. I want to be within, you know, I don't want to get super close to bedding and blow them out. Like I have an idea where they're bedding, you know, because of the sheds, the mature deer. So I'll just put it on the food or trails, you know, coming somewhat close to bedding. And if I got, you know, 4 cameras, and, you know, and especially out in the marsh, you know, there's only so many trails these deer are going to use coming out of these bedding areas, getting in the woods. You know, like, so I'll set them up on high probability areas, you know, like ditch crossings. I'll put it on some ditch crossings near a parking lot. Because if I know I got a buck crossing this ditch, before he crosses the road, I have a good idea where he's bedding on either side of the road. I've been slowly kind of perfecting that and trying to really use cameras to their full advantage for the winter. But like I said, the cameras I got aren't the best. So I'll get like blurry pictures sometimes. I'm like, is that a buck or just blur? So I might have to invest in some better cameras for this plan to actually like really take hold. Because I'll probably get one opportunity on that deer in the month of January, maybe two if it's super cold and there's good food. But we don't really get super cold for more than like 2 or 3 days, and it kind of warms back up. So these deer are not really super, like you guys. It gets, where you might get a 15-degree day with the wind, but it's usually like a 2 or 3 day, and then it's back up to 40. So these deer don't necessarily have to move, but only like a few days out of January, maybe only a handful of days. So I can't really make too many mistakes. So I got to be like super on point, because by then, by January, they're on high alert, they're super skittish, and usually they're herded up with the does. So you not only got to beat the buck, but also you got to beat the 80 fucking does that are living there too. And that seems to be the hardest part. Yeah, I'll see a buck, off in the distance or on my camera, and you hunt it, and it's just all does. Like, you just can't beat that many does.
So when are you going in and checking these cameras?
High windy days, and like I said, in middle of the day. Sometimes I've got into checking them at 2 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock at night. I'll wake up and go check cameras. Sometimes that's like the only option you got, because you need to have the feed through that area and then go check the cameras real fast. Like a super windy day, or you get the rainy day, or snow's coming or something, I'll check all my cameras. Like, I'll really burn the midnight oil, so to speak, and use the weather and wind. Like windy, I love going out windy days checking cameras. Try and stay as scent free as possible. Wear rubber gloves, rubber boots, chest waders, or whatever. Keep your scent to a minimum, and hope for the best, so to speak. Because it's not the bucks I'm worried about bumping; it's the does alerting. Getting the does on high alert, because we all know those days where the does start blowing, and they just keep blowing for the next 30 fucking minutes, 90 fucking times. That's like the worst. It's like a death sentence in January. One doe starts blowing, and there's like random does like everywhere start blowing. It's like, oh, it's a party, awesome. I guess I'll just get down and go home now. Because if there's a buck that's been around for years, he's like, I'm not leaving till dark.
I think that's one of the things that I can, like, I don't know, is probably for every hunter that's hunted the late season, but that's the one thing. It seems like there's no leaves, there's no anything. There's a big blanket of like crunchy snow, and then you hear one deer blow, and it seems like every deer within a square mile is blowing. And like I can picture it in my head. I can see like what exactly, like what it looks like and how it feels like right now.
And that is the worst too, because you have the doe that'll blow, and she'll run away and she'll come back, and she goes, I want to find out what made me nervous. So, and sometimes she'll bring friends with her, and it's like, why are you coming back to danger? Because now it's like, all right, now I have to shoot you. And I really don't want to shoot you because it's cold. I really want to drag you out, but out of sheer principle, I have to shoot you. So then you're in the old Mexican standoff, like down from the ground a lot in the wintertime, and like they come out through, it's like, and you're almost getting ready to draw, and they all look at you, and then you're like mid-draw, freezing. I'm not moving, you move,
I've been there before.
Well, man, we are rooting for you, that's for sure.
I'm trying. Like I said, that's the goal is to shoot a mature buck, in January. I've yet to do that in my 30 years of doing this. So I won't be a complete bow hunter until I kill something late season.
That's the trifecta, huh? Well, maybe, next year, maybe you need to just take all that vacation that you used during the rut and, for yourself, for leading up to Thanksgiving, And you put that January 1st through the 15th, and
come to Michigan.
Yeah, it's yeah, yeah. And it's tough too because January are still a lot of muzzleloader days. So there's a lot of guys out with muzzleloaders. So there's just a lot of competition. Bird hunters, rabbit hunters. Like January is a very active hunting month here in Jersey because it's cool. People will be goose hunting, duck hunting, rabbit hunting. So muzzleloader hunting. So it's extremely trying times for, like, I don't bait, so it's super difficult to get on these deer. Like I said earlier, because the bait people changing up their bait all the time. So these does like, I'm bedded here, and the buck like, I'm with the does, and you don't. A week goes by, your cameras are dead, and then you see them in the field across the street, and there's a giant pile of sweet potatoes, and you're like, well, I can't compete with that. Like I'm private now, and I can't do anything with that.
Right. Well, we love following along with everything that you do. Like I said, just for the whole demeanor of it, just for like the deadpan humor of the public land experience. So
yeah, stubborn. Sheer stubbornness.
So where can everybody follow along with you for this? And honestly, I was gonna tell you, like, I love like your logo. Like, you need to get some shirts or hats or something. I'd definitely rock a hoodie with the bow hunting fiend.
I had some made up last year, like last February, and they did not turn out like the design that we agreed upon. And it was like I spent a good amount of money, and I can't even I ended up throwing them away because they're so horrible. Like, I could not put something out there. I'm like, that was a lot of money, and I just kind of threw it down the drain. Like, they were that bad. It was like, what the fuck is this? And they're like, well, this is what you agreed upon. I'm like, it's not. And then me and the soap screener got into it, and it was like, it's just a losing battle because they're not going to give me my money back, and I get angry. It's like, whatever, like, go fuck yourself. So I took a $500 hit on some shitty-ass hoodies last year, and my wife was like, you spent $500 on that? I was like, well, yeah. She goes, okay. And you get that look, and it's like, yeah, I gotta wait a little bit before I do that. That's why I'm gonna work a lot this winter, this coming month. That way it comes out of my pocket and not our budget.
Right.
So where can people follow along with you?
Instagram, bow hunting team. I need to get back into, like I said, I just started filming again a little bit more this year. So hopefully I'll have some funny shit and maybe some how-tos and bullshit once the season ends. Because I get asked all the time, how I do certain things. And I was never one guy to make videos like that, but people seem to ask for it from time to time. So I figured I'd make some on how I use the saddle, the steps, and some of my quirks, I guess, in the woods. But yeah, YouTube, Instagram, bow hunting fiend.
Awesome.
Numerous podcasts.
Yeah, we'll have to catch up after January so you can tell us your big buck salt marsh January unicorn
story. Exactly. I want to kill something. Even if I got mown down my truck, I'm still going to tag it in.
Oh, man. Well, I think that's all we got for tonight, Greg. I do appreciate it.
All right, man. See you guys.
Yep.